Good evening. You are listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you as usual from the Pinellas Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I'm in the Xtreme Studios. I have from Central Florida the young 20-something himself, Professor Pixel, joining me on the season finale, season 1, episode 22 of Forever Night. Pixel, we've been covering every episode. We've got is it Kevin Dobson or whoever, our super fan who runs a channel, I think, on nothing but these episodes. We've talked about a hit or miss kind of quality to some of these episodes, being a vampire who's trying to atone for her sins. A very progressive show from the early 90s that has Nick Knight working the graveyard shift with a lot of different things. And frankly, we've had some episodes lately that have been pretty good. And this last episode here is about a bunch of beautiful women, lingerie models that one dies early on, and she's actually cared for very well. But it leads into our B story backstory, which is actually pretty good. And I gotta say, this is a very beautiful episode. Some gorgeous women in it too, but it also feels very heavy and meaty, and that it has a lot of backstory with some of the stuff with Nick and Lacroix and other things too, with a ballerina that he fell in love with. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about both of those. But I will say this to wrap up season 1. And to kind of make you kind of interested in season 2, I think this episode was very effective in doing that. My only issue is going to be the dorky ass killer, but enough about me. What about you, sir? What's your thoughts on this episode?
I actually really like it. You're right, absolutely right. Some beautiful women in here. In fact, the way that it starts off, and they're going ahead and they're showing the victim, and she's being prepared, dressed. Nails, lips, and then she sat on a park bench.
We've seen that bench before, though. I believe in an earlier episode. I don't know if that's when Natalie was on when she was on her date, but it felt familiar. I like how they did that.
I actually didn't think about that, but you're probably right. I think that this one has a lot going for it. It's certainly one of the better. I don't want to say mysteries, because it's not really a mystery. The killer is the creepy guy in the background, always watching the lingerie models. Yay!
And it's very obvious, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you can tell the first time you see him.
The thing is, you're right. He is dweeby, but do you think that he bears some kind of similarity to Nick in a way, like a dweeby version of him?
I feel like in Forever Night, again, it's a Canadian TV show. Obviously, Nick is a dirty blonde, as we would call it himself, and all that, and he talks like this and everything. And Lacroix, even though it may have been frosted tips or a hair job, he appears to be blonde. So Jeanette's the classically French-looking, dark-haired Raven-esque person who runs, quote unquote, the Raven. So I wondered if that was intentional, because when you see him, it's like he's behind him, like. I mean, obviously the stories are supposed to mirror each other, right? So I guess physically that didn't go unnoticed by the writers and the director. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think so. I mean, but I think, of course, just having him walk in the background where you could see him the way they framed it and shot it was, if you're paying attention, yeah, it's obvious. You see this really, really early on. I mean, I don't know. And the other thing too is are we going to say people that are good or blonde or bad? No, I don't think that's the theme in here, because early on when we see them getting together and they're going over all these lingerie models, and Skanky knows all of them, and there's references to catalogs of models and soft coreness or whatever, different levels of intimacy presented in the public media for consumption. But I gotta say, this is probably one of Nick's best looks to me, with the slick back here when he's watching the ballerina go. Because I tell you, the pictures, him and Skanky are saying these women are stunning, and they're shot very tastefully, seductively, but not in a trashy manner and everything. And that's really the essence of the show. Is at first I thought it might have been a little, I love it when I get to see all that kind of skin and all that, but and then Skanky was being a little bit of a goof, but it's not. This is a serious episode. Girl goes missing. We don't really see or know why. But it has a lot, where this backstory has got a lot behind it, and a lot of the relationship between him, Lacroix, and Jeanette. So
Yeah.
I do think it was intentional that they made him look like an average Joe, like him, kind of, because his story, the killer story with the models, is reminiscent of Nick's.
Yes. let's go ahead and dive into the past, because Nick was in love with this ballerina from afar. He totally infatuated. But he didn't want to do anything about it. He didn't want to go to her, as Lacroix said. He saw her as a thing of pure beauty, and that pureness needed to be protected. But eventually he does get to the point where he can go ahead and speak to her. And it's during the night, and she goes ahead, and you have Lacroix like whispering in his ear from in another scene, like saying, "Oh no, she has multiple lovers. 2 men at once, yes." But when he goes to speak to her, he is tricked into believing that she is this totally, fully sinful creature, and he drains her for it.
I liked Lacroix. We haven't seen a lot of him. We saw him die earlier in the season, right? And we're like, okay, this is pretty impressive. The guy that's supposed to have turned him as master, we don't see too much of. But the one thing I noticed about the development of his character compared to Nick's being like his master is that he doesn't cackle. He doesn't go, ha, 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 ha. He basically is like, grow up, you little bitch. You're going to be around for a long time. You need to suck it up and not be such a chump. I mean, that's really the message he's delivering to him. So there's a scene here in the backstory where they're in the hallway where he's basically saying, Nicholas, this has only 3 options. And he's being stern, not overly melodramatic, campy, which there's been some camp episodes that we've loved. But I got to tell you, the tone part of it, too, that in addition to the conversation he has where he says you can either consummate it, ignore it, or drain her, so might as well do it, right? And so Nick's struggling, but not angsty like we've seen in some episodes, the modern version of him. But the thing that added a lot to it to me was Jeanette was... I almost thought it was a joke, but I liked how she got called in because she was helping put on like the lingerie show. And I just thought she had a lot of personality in this episode rather than just being, lover / interest / co-turned sister, whatever vibe you want to call that from what we've seen. And so we get to see a heavy dose of her early on, not just as the person to give a little bit of information, like the bartender kind of thing, right? Because that's what it is. And so I really, really liked that. And she kind of was like, no, I kind of really want to understand why. And if you're watching, she's going, not only she get more time, the reason for it writing wise is because of the relationship of what happens here, because what you mentioned is absolutely true. This is, in addition to people that he's may have turned, we saw in earlier episodes and backstories, what happens here is that even though the guy that's captured the latest lingerie model, who's just stunning blonde too, curly hair,
the same actress as the ballerina.
Well, and that's intentional. I mean, of course, it's almost supposed to be like a modern day version, even if the character's not meant to be that. Like we saw a few episodes ago where, the one from his past is actually currently in the future, which is cool. That kind of was a setup for this because, the course saying basically, hey, you're going to see this time and again. She's got multiple lovers, this and that, or whatever. He's fucking with them. Now, he's not like, ha, 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 like, high-fiving the other vampire guys, because as far as we know, we've seen Lacroix by himself. But he gets really pissed off, and he gets kind of hot. And I'm like, the one thing that hasn't been established, or if so, I'm really honestly am not remembering it. We've talked about some of the rules of what it means to be a vampire. The sun's bad. Don't know that we've seen him eat at all. It's implied that he doesn't with Skanky, but we don't know that they can really like make love with her, because obviously he'll kiss and get really aroused and don't want to drink her blood. But here, once he drains her, he's like, are you that much of an idiot where you kind of got whatever? But the real thing is how all this happens at the end, because we get to see the loser guy who's got actually a great kind of psycho kill cave. I really liked how they kind of changed what we were thinking was going to happen. We did not take this lingerie model as a lady in distress. She basically put on the nice clothes that he wanted. There's a fireplace in there. There's flowers and all that. She basically, and she's like, you know what? You're absolutely right. I'm glad you did this. Here, come drink this fine champagne with me. Make love to me. No, it's okay and all that. She does this thing where I'm like, wait a minute, this is kind of turning things on its head, because the guy's basically functionally impotent, right? He captures him to kind of save him from the people who are supposed to be doing her harm. She wants to reward him by making love to him, and he doesn't want it. And he's going to snuff her out with the pillow, because that's the clue Natalie gave us about it. And it's kind of funny as she runs off. I mean, this is an episode that basically should teach Nick and any modern man that if a woman really, really wants to make love to you, she's going to let you know it, and you better not say no. That's my moral takeaway from this episode.
when she does go ahead and hits him over the head and she runs out, I'm like, oh, good. But she goes out and there's a pitchfork and she's gonna stab the guy, but the guy just takes it away. It's like, what happened? Why'd you do that?
Only in a modern cosmopolitan city like Toronto could you go out at like probably 2 a.m. in the morning and run from your high-rise kill area across the street to a place that has a pitchfork. I totally believe it.
But the thing is, I wasn't worried about the pitchfork when Nick shows up. Nick hits it away and turns it into a sharp wooden stick. His one weakness. Because if the guy went ahead and stabbed at him with that, over, done.
Well, Jeanette basically says to him as they're having a little chat there at the end or like that about in the past. Turns out this particular episode with this ballerina is why he says, I'm not going to be doing this anymore. Because there was a reference in there that Lacroix had meant about, hey, it's been 300 years. I think it was 200 or 300 years since da-da-da. So they've been with each other through multiple generations. You know, if you count a generation as 30, 35 years, that's 8 to 10 generations, right? But the very final scene, sir, do you recall it?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
This is a great way to end.
Because we do cut back to the end of the story and Jeanette saying, I never knew exactly what happened. I'm sorry. But Lacroix is gone now. And then we look just outside of his apartment. A man is being drained of his blood. By who? By who? Lacroix. And that's right. How the season ends.
Yeah, instead of those awful yellowy, greenish kind of contacts, they turn red. And you look, and the last scene is him looking at the modern, or the evening skyline of Toronto. So it's like, okay, that's kind of cool. So that's the whole thing too. It's you look back at any of these things, Lacroix is basically telling them, hey, there's no such thing as good or bad. It's just a question of perspective. More relativism. Some people might say. Nick's been a bit of a pansy, but that's the struggle that he has with it too. He knows how women are, so he has a nice thing that Skanky doesn't. There's the on again, off again kind of thing with Natalie that they've teased, or at least whatever. And again, going back to it, I'll simply say this for these 22, 23 episodes with the movie and all that is that it's a good show, a lot of solid episodes, few stinkers in there that I wasn't crazy about, but I really think they did a great job here at the end, these last few episodes, to make you go, you know what? If you might remember, the first episode was very strong. And there were some I liked, some were forgetful, but I think they did a great job of saving some of their best for last, or really wrapping it up strong, because we know that we're going to have Lacroix probably in season 2. Hunting is a bad word to Turk because we don't know, but in a search for Nick here and whatever's going on in season 2. And I know that there's some dramatically different things in season 2 and 3 based on what people have told me about it, because again, this was a first watch for you and I. Final thoughts?
I think they did save some of their best for last. 1966, the episode before this, isn't particularly strong, but before that, you get banger after banger, as the kids say. And you know what? I definitely don't regret us checking out this series. I'm very glad with the choice. But if we had to rank each season 1 we've done, it would be an interesting list. We might need to save that.
Yeah, this one's solid. It was the first watch for me, so I really don't know what to get into. It's definitely a 90s show that I was aware of some of it too, and it's not necessarily high budget, but I think it was very strong. I think it was very solid. It's definitely very enjoyable and fun. So a lot of things you're going to go, yeah, I get what they're doing or whatever, but the enjoyments and watching it unfold and the vibe that you get from it. So I'm excited with some of the characters they have. I like the area of the Raven, the bar and all that. Some of the way they choose to shoot some of the shots, kind of funky and cyberpunkish a little bit or whatever. It's just, and Nick does a great job of being angsty, and we know we're going to get that. And it was so appropriate a generation ago in the 90s as this was going. So we'll see about doing season 2 and 3 later this year, rolling into next year as we're getting ready to do another season 1 here on Xtreme TV. I'd like to thank everybody for watching, listening, our super fans here. Very, very, I'd say without a doubt, the most passionate crowd outside of the James Bond films that we've done here. But in terms of television, absolutely no question about this one's garnered the most attention. I really appreciate everybody giving feedback on that. So shout out to all you guys there too. We'll see how this goes. Definitely looking forward to doing season 2. For Professor Pixel and everybody involved here at the Xtreme Movie Show, good night now.
This was not a Dan Curtis production.